Welcome to the Global WarWatch Network. Today we're taking a deep dive into something really crucial in modern conflict: air defense mechanisms. You've given us a really fascinating stack of sources for this one. We've got everything from a detailed primer on India and Pakistan systems
Yeah.
to recent news reports and even some incredibly specific technical specifications from, well, a popular online encyclopedia.
Yes, and what really stood out, I think, in reviewing these is how they don't just list the hardware. They really try to unpack the strategic implications, the economic realities for these two nuclear-armed neighbors, and it's all happening in a security landscape that's, frankly, evolving incredibly rapidly.
Exactly. So our mission today is to properly examine this recent military confrontation, Operation Sindoor. We want to uncover what it revealed about the air defense capabilities of both India and Pakistan. We're going to explore their arsenals, look at how they performed under pressure, and, what does this all mean for stability in the region? So what lessons can we draw for the future of warfare in South Asia? Let's get into it. Okay, let's kick things off with Operation Sindoor itself. The sources really highlight this event on May 6th and 7th, 2025 as a genuine watershed moment. It seems it was triggered by a devastating terrorist attack in Pahalgam that killed 26 civilians, and that prompted India to launch these precision air and missile strikes.
Right, and this brings up a really important question. Why did this particular fight become primarily an air and air defense war? The sources make it very clear. It just unequivocally underscored how critical air defense is, protecting everything from static installations, vital infrastructure, to civilian areas. This was a direct, you could say, high-stakes test of both countries' AD capabilities.
Okay, so let's turn to India first. Our sources, they paint a picture of a system that's really robust, multi-tiered. Can you sort of walk us through those different layers from, say, ballistic missile defense down to the really short-range stuff?
Sure, if we look at the bigger picture, India's Ballistic Missile Defense, or BMD program, that's a key differentiator. It actually started way back in 1995. That was right after Pakistan got those M11 missiles. So phase one, that was completed in 2019. And it focused mainly on countering Pakistani threats. We're talking interceptors like the Prithvi Air Defense, PAD, and the Advanced Air Defense, AAD. These things are designed to hit targets up to 2,000 kilometers away at altitudes up to 80 kilometers and traveling at speeds up to Mach 5. I mean, incredible technology. Phase 2 is underway now. That's aimed more at Chinese missiles, pushing the range out to 5,000 kilometers, altitudes up to 100 kilometers using the PDD interceptor.
That's some serious reach. But okay, beyond ballistic missiles, what about the systems dealing with aircraft, drones, cruise missiles, the more conventional air threats?
Right. And what really stands out here is India's approach. It's a mix, a strategic blend of buying systems from abroad and developing their own indigenously. So for long range, think up to 400 kilometers, they have the Russian S-400 Triumph. They've actually renamed it Sudarshan Chakra. India's already got 3 of the 5 regiments they ordered, with the last 2 expected by 2026. This system, it can track and hit 36 targets at the same time, way out to 400 kilometers.
36 targets simultaneously. Wow.
Yeah. Then, medium range, say up to 100 kilometers, you've got the Barak 8. That was co-developed with Israel. The MR-SAM version, medium range surface-to-air missile, has a range up to 70 kilometers. It just finished its final test back in April 2025. Provides really crucial area defense. Then short range, up to about 35 kilometers. There's the homegrown Akash system. That was inducted in 2015. Range about 35 kilometers. And its newer version, Akash NG, pushes that out to 70 kilometers. Plus, the Israeli S-400 system, that's the one they used to shoot down that Pakistani drone back in 2019. It has 15 kilometers and 35 kilometer variants. And finally, very short range, under 10 kilometers. They've got some older Soviet systems, but also newly bought Russian Iglades manpads. And they're developing their own VS ARADs, too. So layers upon layers.
So it's clearly not just about having the missiles themselves, it's how they're all linked up, networked, right? That monitoring and coordination must be absolutely vital.
You've hit it exactly. Monitoring, coordination, absolutely crucial. India uses things like the Swordfish long-range tracking radar that has a reported range up to 1,500 kilometers, also Israeli ELM 2090 parasystems. And then there are the eyes in the sky, the AEW and C systems, like the DRDO's Nitra 240-degree view, 200-kilometer range, and the Israeli Falcon AWEPU ACS, which gives 360 degrees out to 400 kilometers. All this data feeds into their Integrated Air Command and Control System, the IACCS, for the Air Force. That system apparently has 9 nodes covering all of Indian airspace. And the Army has its own system, Akash. What's interesting is they're actively working to integrate Akash with the Air Force's IACCS. One site apparently achieved that integration by January 2025. So yeah, it's like having all these different eyes and ears constantly feeding information to a central brain for those split-second calls.
That's a really comprehensive picture of India's setup. Very integrated. Now, next pivot. Let's look across the border. Our sources suggest Pakistan's air defense, well, also multi-layered, is maybe nascent, is the word used, compared to India's. What are its main parts, and where do the potential vulnerabilities seem to lie?
Well, one thing the sources point out, which is quite intriguing, is Pakistan's historical tendency to focus more on defending specific bases rather than, say, providing a blanket territorial defense. They've tended to rely more heavily on their fighter jets for that broader air cover. And their ground-based systems, they are predominantly Chinese. The Pakistan Army uses Chinese SA-2s, French Crowtails, and their own Anza manpads. Those are based on Russian and Chinese designs. They also have the FM-90. That's derived from the Chinese HQ-7, which, interestingly, is itself a reverse-engineered French Crowtail. It has about a 15-kilometer range. Their main medium-range system is the Chinese HQ-16A, also known as the LY-80. They got those in the 2010s, ranged to 40 kilometers. This is all part of what they call their Comprehensive Layered Integrated Air Defense, or CLAI-8. And the Air Force? The Pakistan Air Force, the PAF, set up an air defense command back in 1975. They use French Mistral VS-ORADs, but, and this is a key point from the sources, there seems to be a lack of clarity on how well the PAF and the Army systems are actually integrated. Operation Sindoor really seemed to expose some pretty significant gaps there. The Navy, the PN, they also want multi-layered AD. They've likely put the LY-80N, that's the ship-launched version of the HQ-16, on their new Chinese-built frigates. But the sources describe these ships as potentially vulnerable to saturation attacks, meaning they might struggle to handle lots of incoming threats at once.
And you mentioned reliance on China. The sources also suggest Pakistan faced a kind of trade-off in investment. They prioritized other things over air defense.
Yes, that's a really critical point the sources hammer home. Before Operation Sindoor, Pakistan seems to have prioritized buying offensive stuff, drones, multiple rocket launchers. And this meant their air defense capabilities kind of languished. Partly due to cost, yes, but also, interestingly, resistance from suppliers like Russia, the US, and Europe. So this financial squeeze and political reality largely explain why they lean so heavily on Chinese systems. Even though, as reported, those systems didn't perform particularly well during the conflict, it was a strategic choice with clear consequences.
Okay, this is where it gets really crucial and maybe a bit stark. Operation Sindoor, as the real-world test. Well, what actually happened? What did it show us about what works and, well, what doesn't?
Well, it certainly begs the question, how did those Chinese systems hold up under real fire? The reports indicate India managed to hit 11 different PAF air bases with precision strikes. They apparently took out radar sites, weapons storage, even damaged runways. And crucially, key Pakistani missile systems, the HQ-16 and the longer-range HQ-9P, along with their Chinese radars, were reportedly destroyed. This apparently left critical areas, like around Lahore, pretty exposed from an air defense perspective. It was a significant blow.
And the sources mentioned China quickly resupplied HQ-16s afterwards. What's the significance of that beyond just replacing hardware?
Yeah, that's an interesting detail. While China did ship new HQ-16 batches quickly, the analysis suggests this was less about giving Pakistan a real technical advantage and more about a symbolic restoration of military confidence. Kind of a political move. Because the reports also highlight how India's BrahMos cruise missile could apparently evade the HQ-62 and its low flight path, its high speed. It just seemed to get past those defenses, which really underscored the HQ-16's limitations against more sophisticated modern strike platforms. So yes, the resupply happened, but the underlying assessment is that Pakistan's air defense remains, quote, critically weakened. It really highlights the potential pitfalls of relying heavily on imported tech that might not hold up under pressure from a determined, capable adversary.
Right, and the conflict wasn't just air defense versus missiles, was it? The sources talk about a dangerous escalation into hybrid warfare. What does that mean here? How did that play out?
This seems to point towards Pakistan's desperation, as one source puts it. They apparently resorted to using drone swarms and missile salvos, but the analysis suggests this was largely a diversion, a tactic to try and cover infiltration attempts by Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists, maybe hoping to exploit perceived gaps during the main conflict. However, India's own multi-layered security grid seems to have held up. They successfully intercepted the drone swarms and neutralized 7 terrorists trying to cross the Samba international border. And importantly, no Indian BSF casualties were reported in that incident. It's also noted that the debris from the downed drones indicated, quote, substandard technology, possibly Chinese or Iranian. Again, raising questions about the quality of some equipment.
And the economic fallout from all this. The sources paint quite contrasting pictures for India and Pakistan.
Yeah, stepping back to look at that, it's quite stark. India's markets showed, well, remarkable resilience. The Sensex, the Nifty. They dipped initially, sure, but recovered quickly, even closed slightly higher. And Indian defense stocks, AALBEL, they actually soared. Boosted by government spending, the Make in India push. It suggests strong underlying investor confidence. But Pakistan, a very different story. The KSE 100 index plunged 5% during the operation, part of a larger 10% drop since late April. This clearly reflects the pressures on Pakistan's economy, the instability, capital flight concerns. Military tensions definitely have economic consequences.
And it seems these pressures also spilled over internally for Pakistan. You mentioned the Balochistan conflict.
Exactly. That became what one source called a significant second front. Insurgent groups like the BLA stepped up their attacks, including hitting CPEC projects. The reports suggest this exposed structural vulnerabilities because Pakistan had to redeploy troops to the Indian border, leaving some areas more exposed internally.
And Turkey's role. The sources highlight their connection to Pakistan too, right?
Yes, what's interesting there is the longstanding support Turkey provides Pakistan. It's based on shared geopolitical, cultural, strategic ties. They hold joint military drills. Turkey supplies hardware, including, reportedly, the ISIS-Guard Songar drone used by Pakistan against India in this conflict. Their trade is over $1 billion annually, and they're even negotiating a free trade agreement. So it's a significant relationship in the regional mix.
So amidst all these intense dynamics with Pakistan and the role of players like China and Turkey, what do the sources tell us about India's wider relationships with its other key neighbors, China, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh?
That's a good question. How do these events ripple outwards? With China, well, the border disputes haven't gone away, that's clear. But there's talk of a cautious thawing since the Galwan clash. Some troop pullbacks, resumed talks. Though Chinese cyber surveillance against India remains a persistent issue. With Sri Lanka, there are ongoing tensions, maritime issues, Chinese influence. But India is also a vital trade partner and provides significant economic aid, showing a more pragmatic side. And with Bangladesh, ties apparently cooled a bit after their 2024 political changes. There were trade disruptions, like India pulling back on a transit agreement. But the underlying message seems to be that both countries know they need each other, suggesting political friction might be temporary.
Okay, so bringing this all together, what's the big takeaway? This deep dive really underscores the absolutely critical role of air defense in any modern conflict. And India, it seems, is very deliberately building this resilient, multi-layered system, combining its own tech with advanced foreign systems.
Indeed. And Pakistan, well, despite their efforts, despite considerable Chinese support, seems to be playing catch-up. Operation Sindoor really exposed vulnerabilities in their setup. It served as a harsh reminder, perhaps, about the limitations of relying too heavily on imported tech, especially if it's potentially substandard when facing a real fight.
And it wasn't just military versus military, was it? It highlighted this whole complex web economic factors, political maneuvering, strategic interests, hybrid tactics. The sources keep coming back to India's resilience, even while juggling these really complex regional dynamics and new threats.
Absolutely. Looking at the big picture, this high-stakes contest of will, technology, and tactics, as one source called it, it's going to continue shaping regional stability, no doubt. And the events of 2025 show something interesting. While geopolitics grabs the headlines, market stability can persist if the core economic fundamentals are strong.
Right. Okay, here's a final thought for you, our listeners, to mull over as we wrap up. How will India's ongoing push for indigenous defense capabilities, contrasted with Pakistan's continued reliance on foreign aid and suppliers? How will that dynamic reshape the strategic balance in South Asia in the years ahead? Something we'll definitely keep watching here. That was a truly fascinating deep dive into the complex world of air defense and geopolitics in South Asia. We hope you've gained a really comprehensive understanding of India and Pakistan's capabilities, the significance of Operation Sindoor, and the wider strategic picture. This deep dive was brought to you by the Global WarWatch Network. If you found this discussion valuable, please do like, share, and subscribe to the Global WarWatch Network wherever you get your deep dives. We also love to hear what you think. Put your thoughts in the comment section below, and join us on social media. You'll find the links in the description. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back soon with another deep dive.